This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a special returning guest, Ashley St. Clair. She's the author of Elephants Are Not Birds, a great book for kids. And she's also been a big troublemaker on social media of late. And Ash, I've got like 4 topics that I want to talk to you about, and I really want to make sure we get through them all. So we're going to be a little fun about this. I wrote them down. Pick a number between 1 and 4.
3.
Okay. Airplane Gate. So you recently broke this story that is, I read what you wrote. I've heard it from you. It seems so crazy that I feel like I'm missing something here, and I don't think I am. Can you explain to people beat by beat? You were coming back from, I think, CPAC in Arizona, or one of those conventions. Can you explain to people what you saw? Because you had the receipts as well. Can you break this down?
Yes. So I was at Turning Point's AmFest, America Fest, in Arizona, and I was catching a late night flight, red-eye flight, 11 p.m., leaving Phoenix Sky Harbor and coming back to New York City, landing at 6 a.m. And I've been down to the border several times, been down to the processing center. I've interviewed these migrants coming across. We're seeing astronomical record numbers crossing our border. And immediately at my gate, I recognize a line of people all holding bags from the processing centers. I recognize those bags right away. And so I immediately go into the Delta Lounge to talk to the rep. And I said, are these all migrants coming from the processing center? And have they been properly screened medically? That was my first concern. I'm going back to my baby boy who's 2 years old. I'm like, have they had proper medical screenings? Didn't even care at that point that they're, flying these migrants around our country on taxpayer dollars. I'm like, there's a 20% rise in tuberculosis in New York City. So, and immediately the Delta rep goes, well, what do you care? They're humans too. Would you like a mask? And so I'm like, okay, I see what's going on here. That rep ended up following me until
hold on. You know what it's like? It's like, where it's really easy to get diseases from? It's not other species. It's our own. That's
yes.
If you didn't think of them as humans, then you'd be fine because you can't catch diseases from elephants or birds.
Yes.
Really,
so immediately, this very flamboyant Delta rep it offers me a mask. And so I was like, I see what's going on here. And I FaceTimed my friend Jack Posobiec, who we know. And he was like, what are you doing FaceTiming me? Record this. So I took a little video and I posted it online. I took a photo of the woman next to me is sitting there with a bag from the processing center asking me how to plug in the charger. Very obviously just left the processing center, which means she crossed the border illegally. And then I posted it online. It ended up getting 40 million views, I believe, on my page alone. And Matt Gaetz ended up writing a letter to Delta, but after I posted this, I realized it's happening on all of these airlines. Every major airline is facilitating the transportation of people who crossed our border illegally, and they're busing them and flying them all over. New York City, Charlotte, Philadelphia, East Coast, West Coast, all over.
I don't understand how. I'm an immigrant, so I don't have this kind of anti-immigrant animus to some extent, but I don't understand how, if I'm crossing a border illegally, I can get my ass on a plane. Like, so do they have passports? Do they have ID? Like, I don't understand this.
Some of them do, but a lot of them do not. A lot of them, they are able to use arrest warrants as ID. That's acceptable forms of ID according to TSA for these folks. But what's happening is, and this is happening internationally, it's not just in the United States, though our migrant crisis is unprecedented, they're abusing these asylum laws and refugee treaties to an absurd degree. So what happens is, as soon as they step foot on American soil and they say, I'm claiming asylum, we have to quote unquote give them a shot. And these folks, many of them, I would argue a majority of them, do not have actual substantial asylum claims, but we're not going to find that out till the 2030s for some of these folks if they end up showing up to their court dates that are scheduled well into the 2030s. That's when their court dates are for crossing our border illegally. claiming asylum. 2030s, we'll find out.
So the current okay, my head's still spinning. When my family came to this country, we had to have, like, a sponsor family who vouched for us. You blew it. But point being, we couldn't just show up and be like, "Hey, we're here, and now we're just gonna get on a plane," right? Point being, the law is such that anyone who crosses our border is inherently given the benefit of the doubt, and if I'm, not acting in good faith, right? If I just wanna come to the States, how are you going to disprove my claim that I'm seeking asylum? Unless I'm ca even if I'm unless I'm carrying like a "I heart Osama bin Laden" button, I'm just even talking about, like, just straight up gang members, things like that. Like, if I'm coming from a violent country and I'm a member of a gang that's losing, it would make sense for me to, get my ass across the border and have a comfy situation in the United States, and ho what would stop that from happening?
There's nothing to stop that from happening. As a matter of fact, there's some people who are coming here. They have the teardrop tattoos right on their face. So not only do they kill people, but they want you to know that they kill people, and they're coming across claiming asylum. And what's happening if you go down to the southern border? It's really interesting. You will see the IDs discarded. They discard the IDs. They scratch them off. Some cases, we just saw Guatemalan refugees who are burying the IDs and their documentation because the other countries that they travel through, and sometimes they'll even claim asylum in some of these other countries before they come here, they need ID passing through these other countries. But as soon as they come here, they're able to discard it. And we don't require ID. We're not requiring any of this documentation. They are whoever they say they are. And a lot of these NGOs facilitating it as well. There's a lot of people who are going to hear this and they're going to think it's conspiratorial. This is 100% what's happening. You can go down to the Darien Gap and see this for yourself. These NGOs coach these people. The NGOs, these are non-government organizations that essentially operate on behalf of the United States government. They're heavily funded by the United States government. They fly American flags outside of their organizations in all these South American countries. And they will coach people. They will coach these migrants on how to claim asylum. So not only are they coming here, they know exactly what to say to claim asylum. And again, we have to give them a shot, and we're not going to find out. I looked at one guy, I looked at his paperwork, had a court date 2025 in Arizona. This guy was in San Antonio. Do you really think he's going to that court date in Phoenix, in Arizona, in 2025 next year? Probably not. And how about the ones who have court dates into the 2030s? Probably not.
Is there any mechanism in place, as far as you know, I'm not an expert in this at all, to I mean, it's almost a joke question, but I still wanna hear your knowledge as far as you have it. Is there any mechanism in place to integrate these people into American society? Because let's suppose best case scenario, right? I'm from another country, I don't speak the language, or I speak it poorly. Maybe I haven't got an education, so I don't have any skills. Even in that best case scenario, what am I supposed to do is as an illegal immigrant in America? Like, I can't get a job. I have nothing to offer. It's not going to be a good thing for young males, especially who have no prospects. They're not going to go in a good direction. That's, universally the case. So is there any mechanism in place to integrate these people?
No, there is no mechanism for assimilation whatsoever. And what happens is they end up congregating in areas like New York, and they form their own communities. Here in New York, they're going door to door in areas of Staten Island because the migrants are just overflowing. They're going door to door and asking for food. I spoke to farmers out in Arizona where they are leaving food drops for the migrants so that the migrants don't kill their cattle and eat them. This is I mean, it is insane. And when you speak to these border towns, which are primarily Hispanic Americans, citizens, I spoke to a lot of children in these border towns who told me the young girls don't go for walks anymore because there's an increase in cases of rape. They don't go outside past a certain hour. They have migrants coming to their door asking for food. This one 15-year-old boy said he was just so happy that he was there when four migrants tried to break into his mother's car while she was in it. And this 15-year-old boy is saying, I was happy I was there to protect my mom. Their hospitals are overwhelmed. They're, good luck getting into any of the hospitals where, hospitals can't refuse service. So that's where they go. They overwhelm the hospitals. We don't have the infrastructure for this either. So we're seeing sewage crises over in Staten Island, just the vast amounts of crumbling this is doing to our country, our communities, our infrastructure is insane.
And if we take at face value the argument that these are desperate people who are, engaging in desperate actions for freedom, well, you shouldn't be surprised when desperate people behave in desperate ways, right? I mean, that would fall, including in sometimes crime.
I would agree with that. Yes, desperate people do these things, but a lot of these people are not desperate. There's people who on camera are telling me they're just coming here for economic reasons, social status. One said verbatim social status in his language, and it's primarily military age men coming across our border. There are a lot of narratives, and they will hyperfixate, put that camera in, zoom the camera in when there's women and children coming across. But I watched it in the span of 30 minutes at the border. I'm watching 400 migrants cross, primarily military age men by themselves. And even the women and children, there are many cases where those children are not even theirs. So there's the plethora of issues that's coming up. It's so deep, so vast, and it's heavily funded by the United States government. They are absolutely facilitating this crisis, and they're not doing anything to stop this. I believe Mayorkas should be in jail, frankly.
Wait a minute, hold on. I'm gonna disagree with you. It's not that they're not doing anything to stop it. They're stopping what's they're taking actions to prevent it from being stopped because Governor Abbott here in Texas finally stood up for something, and he said he's going to make it a state crime to cross the border legally, and now the federal government is suing him. So they are
Yes.
very clearly, intentionally saying, because if this was a crisis, it's kind of like any port in a storm. Like if you look at some countries around the world, like they get hit by a tsunami, they're like, send us food. I don't care. Like you don't start worrying about who's sending you food. Maybe it's a country like North and South Korea helped each other at different times because there were calamities because they're like, okay, this is humanitarian. If your priority is if the Texas state government is stepping in, if this was a crisis you'd be concerned about, you'd be like, all right, all hands on deck, let's work together. This is a problem. If your priority, in my opinion, is we're going to make sure you as Texas don't stop this, it's very clear this is intentional or and supported and validated.
They're actively facilitating it, Michael. They are from not only them suing Governor Abbott, but when you look at these NGOs, they're using these NGOs to facilitate a lot of these things, from just taking these migrants in to then transporting these migrants all over the country. One NGO in particular, IRC, receives hundreds of millions of dollars from not only the United States government, but 75 million from the EU. Another one, a Catholic charity, which makes a lot of their documentation not publicly accessible since they hide under the guise of this religious organization. Catholic Community Services of Arizona is the paperwork that a lot of these migrants were holding at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. They also receive substantial funding from the federal government, from the state government in Arizona, and from other organizations like the Bezos Family Fund. But the United States government is 100% facilitating this and funding it to the degree of billions of dollars.
Yeah, this is, and what do you think is their motivation here?
Voters.
Okay.
And we see the part of it. I think there's a lot of other conspiratorial agendas that capture the discourse, but we saw here in New York, I'm not sure if you saw when they passed the bill here in New York to allow non-citizens, they call them, non-citizens to vote in our local elections.
Yeah.
That passed in New York City. It ended up getting struck down by a higher court, but they're not done. There are similar bills like this they're attempting to pass in major blue cities all across the country. They are importing a very ignorant voting population. And when you speak to these migrants, it's really incredible if you ask them about Trump v. Biden. Almost every single person is saying, well, I like Biden. He's letting me come here. This
Yeah.
is genuinely their understanding of it. Their understanding is, I
But they're
will come
right.
to the, yes, yes, they're
They're right.
absolutely right. They're getting cash cards, they're getting phones, they're getting housing, they're getting all of the above. I would love Biden too if I were them. But they understand this and they are like, we're pro Biden. And millions of them coming in are saying, we're pro Biden, we're pro Democrats. They're giving us all this free stuff.
Well, okay. Well, have the Republicans done really anything about this?
No. There maybe they'll get something done. I think Congress and Senate are some of the most useless factions of our government. They all just did, many House members, some of which I like, just did a border trip. And it's like, it took you this long to go down to the border. This has been a crisis for years, and it took you this long to go down. When I'm getting these airline insiders who are telling me about this, I'm seeing reports for the entirety of the Biden administration back in 2021. It's 2024 now. You're just now going down there. Give me a break. I don't think they're doing anything substantial, but I think the consequences need to be severe on people like Mayorkas, on people like Biden. I mean, Biden is actively facilitating this. He's having conversations with Mexico, and Mexico is coming back saying, we'll help you out if you give us $20 billion, 20 billion or 20 million, some fat figure, and also remove the sanctions on Venezuela. That is what they're saying. Just a
wow.
teeny tiny little ask. That is what just happened, I believe, today or yesterday. They're like, yeah, maybe if you remove the sanctions from Venezuela, we'll do something. That is absurd. That should be something that you're like, okay, we're going to put the hammer down on Mexico now. If this is what you're doing, you're actively facilitating this. You're actively helping out Venezuela to screw over our entire country, because that's where a lot of these migrants are coming from, is Venezuela. A very small percentage are actually coming from Mexico.
It's kind of interesting to me because all of these claims where people are like, look, the argument is, and it's not entirely fallacious, that many of these people are escaping desperate circumstances, and that's fine, but they're not coming from Mexico. So there are a lot of countries along the way where they can speak the language, where they can integrate themselves much easier. So why is it necessarily going to be the US's problem as opposed to Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama? Like I named them all. I know the whole list. So it's just like it's what happens when you have a Russian dad who beats the geography into your head. But my point stands is that like you're there. If you and I are like freaking the hell out and we got to leave, you don't like, well, I'm just going to go wherever I want. You just go with what's available to you.
Well, they're not going to get cash cards and
Right.
iPhones
Right.
and free housing in Panama.
Exactly.
In New York City, we're spending $1 billion to house them in luxury hotels for a year.
I
for 3
remember
years.
Marianne Williamson was on Tim Pool last week, and he had asked her about this, and she starts going off about Cuba, right, and how the sanctions for Cuba hurt the Cuban people. And you can make that argument. I think it's a reasonable argument to make. And it's just like, you can't walk here from Cuba. Like these Cubans have nothing to do with these migrants. Like, what are you talking? It was such a non sequitur. She was not wrong, but it was a complete like misdirection. I'm like, lady, what are you talking about? Okay, we have three other things.
But I don't blame her though, and I will say one more thing on that is
Please.
that there is a total misconception that it's not only just Mexico but just South America. These folks are coming from all over the world. We're seeing an insane increase from people coming from the Middle East. We're seeing a 900% increase in Chinese nationals coming through, and they have a little bit more money than some of the other migrants coming, so they end up paying to get these tours basically from South America right to our southern border. They're paying to be put on these trains and put right to our southern border, and they're paying to be picked up after they cross the border. So our southern border, and if anybody takes anything from this, our southern border is an open border to the world. That is what's happening right now.
Folks, it's the new year, so maybe you shouldn't be dressing like so much of a slob all the time. And that's where Rhone comes in. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the Commuter Collection. It offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos, and you never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone Commuter Collection. Why? Their comfortable four-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility, so you're free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident without the hassle, because Rhone has wrinkle release technology. So that means wrinkles disappear as you stretch and you wear the products. It's just that easy. And there's even more. With their Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. Top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable. You can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. It's a great product at a reasonable price. Their Commuter Collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/malice, RHONE.com/malice. Use promo code malice. You get 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/malice. Use code malice. It's time to find your corner office comfort. And I know some of you guys need a wardrobe upgrade, and I do mean guys. You know who I'm talking about. It's you. Let's get back to the show. You just triggered me by making me remember something that happened in 2020, which is one of the things I really hate is midwits, which is people who are marginally intelligent but think they're brilliant. When President Trump was talking about coyotes helping these immigrants cross the border, and every corporate journalist was like, "Ha ha ha!" He talked about coyotes. Like, what's next? Like the kangaroos, and it's the term for these smugglers. But like, if you're like you're the stupid one, it's like when they're going after Joe Rogan, saying like, "Did you hear that? He said he eats horse paste." It's just like this is why I also say the enemy class is not composed of impressive people. Okay, we got 1, 2, and 4 to choose from next.
One.
Okay, so I didn't see this directly, but a friend of mine was like, "You got to ask her when she's on the show. What the hell happened? There was some beef between you and Mark Cuban and Elon Musk." And the point that they made is it's Twitter. I'm gonna call it Twitter.
Dead
Is so
naming,
great.
bigot.
What I did
You bigot.
uh, um,
Cancel him. Take him off YouTube.
is the fact that people like Mark Cuban now have to answer to people like you, which is no disrespect to you, but you know what I'm saying. And then you could hold him to task, and people like me. So can you break down what the whole story was with that?
So I have to preface this by saying I do have a lot of respect for Mark Cuban for engaging in discourse because you really
Sure.
people of that level are hardly accessible. So I do have a lot of respect for people who reach a certain level and maintain accessibility, especially as it pertains to discourse. But Mark Cuban was going off about DEI, and his position is that all of the letters in DEI are good, right? Everybody likes diversity. Everybody likes
Um,
equity. Everybody
Can
likes
I stop
inclusion.
you? Can I stop you? I gotta stop you, Ash. It's so It I when someone says something like this, it's because he's not a dumb person. Like, there's a lot you could say about Mark Cuban. He's clearly a bright man. When someone is that bright and that accomplished and they're being this disingenuous, I always wonder, like, are you just lying? Are you lying badly because you think I'm not gonna it's like when people say how could you be against Antifa? Are you a fascist? It's just like because they're Antifa means anti-fascist. Like, what are we doing here? Like, who you like, you're lying. I know you're lying. What do you think? Do you think he's just being naive?
No, I do think there's a little bit of naivety there because he has his own version essentially of a DEI that is very idealistic. And
Sure.
sure, if every corporation implemented DEI in the way that Mark Cuban is talking about it, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. I think he's oblivious to the way that DEI is being weaponized and
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
that it works in actuality with a lot of these corporations, which
You
is
know you know
why. Go ahead. Go ahead.
you know why he's in a position to be naive? Because if you're playing ball, they're not gonna come for you. So from his perspective, he's in a position to be in a bubble where it's just like, all this means to me, Mark Cuban, is if someone shows up and they've got a different skin color than me or a weird name, they're an immigrant, I'm gonna treat them with respect. What the hell's wrong with that? Like, I can see because he's never had to he had the stick hit. He's only got the carrot. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I would agree 100%. So I feel like that's where he was coming from with a total disregard for how rotten and abusive the DEI system has become and frankly dangerous. So we got into a back and forth about this and he's like, "Well, wouldn't you agree?" I'm like, "Yes, Mark. Anybody would agree with those principles. However, that's not reality."
Yeah.
And so, I did respond to him with the video that James O'Keefe had posted of Krishna, the CEO of IBM, talking about firing people and taking away their bonuses if they did not hire a certain percentage of, this group or that group. To which his response was, "You're really going to use a James O'Keefe edited video?" And I said, so I take it you do disagree with what Krishna is saying here. You just
Yeah,
disagree
yeah.
with the messenger. And it ended up, surprisingly enough, if you go back on the thread a day later, he ends up coming back to it and saying, I was wrong about this James
Oh,
O'Keefe video. It wasn't edited. He was upfront that it was from 2021. And, when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So I do have a lot of respect for Cuban in a lot of ways and the way that he engages with it. But he's been duped into this flowery imagine version, and all the celebrities saying imagine. He seems to be duped into this flowery imagine idealistic version of DEI. Well, if everyone was normal and nice, Well, Mark, everybody, especially the people running this country and most of these organizations, are not normal and nice. So that's
Yeah.
not how it works out.
But
But it
this also
was a good back and forth, in my opinion.
this also speaks to, something else that I think is very important. I had, one of the moms from Liberty on the show a few weeks ago, and you're a mom, obviously. Uh, when people are talking about how, oh, there's no like porn in school libraries, this is just overreaction by the right. You guys are crazy. You're saying that if you have a children's book and there's a boy who has a boyfriend, that this is pornographic. You're just hysterical Nazis, blah blah blah. And she's like, I've got the stack of books right here. We're talking about visual representations of oral and other types of intercourse being shown to elementary school kids. This is straight up inappropriate, and you're gaslighting us. And but the thing is, they could have gotten away with this before the internet, and Mark Cuban could have been oblivious to it before the internet. But thanks to the internet, and especially a place like Twitter, you could be like, fine, you think I'm a lunatic. I'm Ashley St. Clair. I know what I'm talking about. Call me whatever you want. Here's the video. Like, don't
Yes,
trust me. You
yes.
don't have to take my word for it. Here's the video in his words. Here are the books with the pictures. You can call me whatever you want. How do you answer this? And for some people, they're going to be like, oh, holy crap. Like Bill Maher had Roseanne on and she was red pilling him. And he's like, I never heard of any of this because in the media he consumes, it would never cross his desk.
Well, that's the beauty of X, right? Is not only are we, there's free speech, but seriously, okay, I'm not going to dead name it. I don't want to get banned on YouTube. But the beauty of X is that you're able to dismantle these narratives in real time, which we
Yes.
weren't able to do a few years ago on Twitter. There's this ability to dismantle them by showing people the truth and showing them what's happened. And Seth Dillon, he used to own Libs of TikTok. And so I did a lot of work with high end Libs of TikTok. And it was astonishing to me to see, I have never seen anyone, any individual, any journalist, any activist, nobody who encounters the amount of vitriol that she does.
Yeah.
And whether you agree with her or not, all she essentially does is repost their
Hmm.
own words. All she does is repost those books. All she does is repost the videos they're making themselves, putting their words out there because she's shining sunlight. It's genuinely the best disinfectant. And they're like little vampires. They shrivel up and they freak out, but it's for that reason because they can't get away from it. You're showing them, here, this is exactly what you're doing. Here's the book. Here's what they're saying. Refute that, Mark. Refute that, Marianne. They can't. There's nothing they can say when they're confronted with the truth and reality.
I had a tweet, and I'm sure, or a post. That Why have a unique word when you have a generic word? That's just
We're
so much better.
deprogramming you live on air.
I had a post on X not that long, the site formerly known as Twitter, not that long ago, where I said these people could have gotten away with preying on kids for another generation if they just stopped bragging about it. Like if you just kept your no, you're laughing, but it's true. If they kept their mouths shut, they could have been abusing these kids, an entire country of them, and be regarded as heroes for it. And anyone who said anything to the contrary would be dismissed as some kind of Alex Jones tinfoil hat loon.
Yes. The other aspect of this too that I think elicits the Mark Cuban reaction or the reaction of the Marianne Williamsons is if they accept what is really happening, they have to do more. They are no
Yeah.
longer able to be comfortable. Reality disrupts their comfort, and many people don't want to come to terms with the fact that they're raising the price of freedom so high, freedom and sanity so high that no one's willing to pay it. People want to be comfortable. They don't want to make a sacrifice. And so I think that's where you can watch the cognitive dissonance turn on in their brain when they're confronted with a lot of this. So because I genuinely believe that if they accept it and they say, this is true, all of these people are not lunatics. The things they've been screaming about, there may be some validity to it. They have to do more or they won't be able to live with themselves, right? If you
Yeah.
accept they are
Yes.
showing porn in children's schools, this is actually what's happening. They are doing these perverted things. How and you just do nothing.
Right.
You're going to your soul is going to eat itself alive, and I truly believe that's what's happening with a lot of these people because they don't want to have to do anything.
It's also a lot harder because now you have to think, wait a minute, the people on my team or my tribe or my party, they're not just, this isn't an honest disagreement. They're lying and they're systemically lying. This is in the book, The White Pill that you read, when Boris Yeltsin visited the supermarket in Houston, and went there myself because still there, and he's flying back to Russia, the Soviet Union, and he's holding his head in his hands. He's like, holy crap, like they had to lie about what the food situation is like here because then everyone back home would be like, this is ridiculous. So at a certain point, you have to realize, oh, wait a minute, this isn't a difference of opinion. This person's more conservative about sexuality. This person, is more pro LGBT. This is complete dishonesty. And they're making out like moms and dads to be Nazis simply because they're like, I don't think this is appropriate for first graders.
Yes, and you can bring it even back to the migrant crisis, right? They were deliberately lying. I think dishonesty is too kind of a word. It is deliberate manipulation and brainwashing of a people. When we have the migrant crisis the way we do, and we have astronomical numbers coming across our border, 12,000 in a single day, and Mayorkas is getting up there saying it's under control. It's
No,
under
he said
control.
we need he said we need more money for processing and judges. He didn't say we need more money for border control. Did you see that? He was on one
Yes,
of these shows. Yeah.
yes, because what they want to do, they want all of these people to be citizens. That's why AOC is going on air and saying, "Well, the solution to undocumented immigrants is to document them." That is
Yeah.
literally what she said. So they but it's just it's blatant manipulation of people. I mean, you're lying to say that with a straight face and say it's under control.
Guys, it's the new year, and that's a great opportunity for you to get rid of some old habits and start developing healthier, better ones. And that's where Fume comes in. They can really help you out with getting rid of some specific habits that some of you might have. What is Fume? It's an innovative, award-nominated device that instead of electronics is complete natural, instead of vapor uses flavored air, and instead of harmful chemicals, they use all natural, delicious flavors. It will help you break that bad habit because that hand ritual people like to do at a party after dinner. You know what I'm referring to. Stopping is something a lot of people put off because it's hard, but it's extremely important. And switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. And there's no reason that can't be you. Start the New Year's off right with the good habit by going to tryfume.com/malice. That's tryfum.com/malice. And get the journey pack today. Fume is giving listeners of the show 10% off when they use code MALICE to help make starting the good habit that much easier. Let's get back to the show. Okay, Ash, we have number 2 or number 4?
4.
I'm going to give you your kudos because you were the first person I heard talking about this issue, and now it's become much more prominent, and you deserve a lot of credit for this. So one of the things that in America people don't like to hear is the idea of trade-offs. Like, for example, let's suppose there was like a really deadly pandemic and like it's like severely devastating, and there was some vaccine, and the vaccine, like, it's going to make you sick for a week, but you're not going to die, right? A lot of people, it's like it's hard to make that sale because people want to think if I'm doing something, it's got to be all upside, there's no downside. And whenever there's any, like with trans people in sports, like you can't say, well, we should be more integrating trans people in society, but this is going to be unfair. No, it's got to be all or nothing, right? And what you were the first person I heard talk about was the pill and the deleterious effects that the pill has, birth control pill, on young women. And you were, and the thing is, it's so obvious in retrospect that when you manipulate any, and this ties into the trans stuff as well, it's so obvious in retrospect that when you manipulate any human being's hormones, a pregnant woman, a male on steroids, which is testosterone, it's going to have other side effects. How can it not? Hormones are extremely powerful ways for nature to manipulate the body. But the thing is, it was regarded as such a big feminist accomplishment that to have any kind of discussion about, yes, this is a net positive, but it has a lot of costs. You can't have that because then it's like, oh, you hate feminism. It's like, can't you say something is 90% positive and 10% negative? So ever since you were the first person I heard talk about how the dangers of birth control for young women, it's now become very common, and you kind of broke this ice. Can you talk a bit about that? And you must be gladdened to hear how so many people now are making informed decisions for themselves.
Yeah, there's actually a large percentage of Gen Z women who are ditching the pill now. And what a lot of them are realizing, my biggest thing, I'm not anti birth control. I am pro women and pro informed consent.
Yes.
And what's happened is women are not given informed consent. For example, I was put on the pill at 14 years old
Oh my God.
for
Okay.
acne, which in retrospect is like killing a mouse with a rocket launcher because it wasn't even acne; it was regular hormonal skin changes. And I was put on birth control, and there's women I know who are put on it as young as 12, 13 years old, and they don't get off for
Yeah.
decades. They don't even know what it's like to think off site outside of this hormone. And my experience and the experience of countless other women when they get off this pill, it's like, oh my God, that's what it's like to think. Oh my God, I'm not actually fat and psychotic. This is what it's like to think. And to, like you said, to pretend like filling your body with these hormones is not going to have some sort of reaction, whether adverse or not, is fundamentally insane because
Yeah.
anything you put in your body that's unnatural, if you put Skittles in your body every day for a decade, you're probably going to get diabetes. You're probably going to gain some weight. If you put Doritos, anything that's unnatural, there is going to be some sort of reaction. And the vitriol that I was met with when I first started talking about this was insane.
Wait,
NBC even
vitriol from I'm assuming
from the
vitriol from
left,
women.
no, from some women, but mostly the media. So NBC did
Oh,
an entire hit piece saying that I was fear mongering about birth control, and they just want women to be basically handmaid's tales, and I'm doing something very dangerous because a lot of the adverse effects that I'm talking about with birth control, you can also get while pregnant. This is really what they said. An
okay.
NBC article said this. They had doctors come in saying, "Well, a lot of these depression symptoms that she's talking about, you can also get while pregnant." It
Well,
was
I
just
hold on.
insane.
I like the yeah, I like the idea that it's either you take the pill or you get pregnant, as opposed to
Yes,
you can use condoms or diaphragms or other forms of protection, or
and
just not even,
so
or
yes,
celibate. Yeah,
so I responded to them. I did a long form post on X about this, and I responded to them, and I said the insanity to me is that their argument here is that none of the symptoms from birth control are as severe as telling a man no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's really what they're telling women. They're not telling women, well, maybe have less sex with men. These men are using and abusing you.
Or
There's
protected sex.
yes, protect. Well, no, but men do not use condoms anymore. Let's be honest. But
Sure, but
rather
yeah,
than women, any call for women to respect themselves. Not, and I'm not saying any woman who has premarital sex is disrespecting herself, but this culture of casual sex and this culture that we've created with the sexual revolution to think that women can have sex the same way as men and not be affected is really dangerous, and it has been incredibly damaging for women in my opinion. And statistically, if you look at the data, the paradox of declining female happiness really comes into play with the sexual revolution. But rather than us having honest discussions about this, it's like, well, just take the pill and or you're going to end up pregnant.
one of the most evil shows in terms of its consequences for American society, and this is for around women my age, is Sex in the City. Because it very much encouraged women to be not just promiscuous, which I don't have that much of an issue with, but very much look over the shoulder of the guy she's with to see who's on the next, who's next in line. And at a certain point, you're going to age out, and you're going to be at an age where there's going to be some 22 or 23-year-old, and you're going to have fewer options. And you threw a guy who maybe he had some flaws, but so do you, so does everybody, into the trash when he would have been a great partner and provider and dad, or certainly more of one than you gave him a chance. And this kind of idea of viewing one's relationships as like tissues is, I think, really dehumanizing and disrespectful to people of both genders. And it doesn't, and I don't think those women who followed that model ended up, fulfilled. I don't mean sexually fulfilled. I just mean fulfilled as human beings. Like, it doesn't make you a good person to kind of have this like, on to the next one attitude toward whoever you're dating, because you're not present and is building a relationship or even a friendship or any kind of relationship, that so many people have something to offer.
I feel like Sex in the City to me feels very much like predictive programming for the digital age, and I speak about this a lot. And I think it's going to be one of those things that people are going to write me off as a crackpot for saying these things until it's 10 years from now. But I very much think relationships as we know it have been fundamentally damaged by the digital era, because that looking over the shoulder
Yeah.
always exists. And it's not just with women, it's with men
Oh,
too.
sure. Of course.
When you
Yeah.
talk to a lot of these women in these relationships, a lot of the common occurrence with their issues is social media, is Instagram, is them liking women, following women. There's always other options, but this unlimited buffet of women and men has been really damaging, for our relationships and humanity as a whole, in my opinion. So, but I would agree that there are a lot of women infected with this mentality, but also a lot of men. I think
Oh, yeah,
it's
for sure.
culturally, it's just been disastrous, for community and for relationships and for men and women to have life partners. I think we're going to see less and less of this. I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's actually going to get worse, and our relationships are going to be more temporary. We're going to see more of a rise in this weird polyamorous stuff, coming out. We're seeing it now, like all of the top streamers that Gen Z watches, they all have some weird polyamory thing going on. When you look at Sneeko and Destiny and all these folks, for whatever reason, they all have these weird situations. And I genuinely do believe that's going to become more of a norm, for better or worse.
Yeah, and it's 100% gonna become a norm, and here's why we know. It's because I was talking to a good buddy of mine, John, and I'm like, "All right, first acceptance, if it's not push towards lesbian and gay acceptance was a thing. Then they're like, all right, what are we gonna push next? It was trans, even though people with gender dysphoria are a tiny part of the population. It's now become the norm to ask a child what gender they identify as. So I asked my buddy John, I'm like, what's next? He goes, poly. So they're always going to find something else to push to kind of denigrate or at least have some kind of let's say best let's give them the best possible intentions, some new way to look at relationships and interrelationships and sexuality. And I don't and the thing with I know people who are poly. I know one like very prominent person, and there's like all these rules, and it's complicated because it's not for everyone and not everyone can pull it off. And just like if not everyone can pull off being trans and taking hormones and having like, oh, now I'm a crazy person because I'm taking cross gender hormones and my brain's not or my body can't handle it. This idea that everyone can just be hopping with everyone else and not follow this kind of very strict process is to me just absolute bonkers.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And they need to be
Um,
on birth control because they're screwing more people
but it's
infinitely for the rest of their lives.
but it's also like you I don't understand. I understand it. It just doesn't make any emotional sense to me at all. And it also and I know like there's I'm going to be saying the most generic thing, but it's going to be very hard to convince me that this is something that both partners want or that both partners are going to get something out of it equally. Like I and this is very understood in that community that there's all this jealousy that develops. And of course, because if you're having any kind of warm relationship with somebody else, you're going to get feelings from it.
Well, and especially for women, and I'll take it back to the subject of the sexual revolution and the paradox of declining female happiness. We do see more unhappiness in these situations with women. And what few are realizing is this sexual revolution is disproportionately benefiting men. And there's actually a Yale study on this back in 2008, when they were still allowed to talk about these things, that questioned whether or not the sexual revolution has disproportionately benefited men. Is this, as Louise Perry says, is this a world built for the Hugh Hefners at the expense of the Marilyn Monroes? And that's a very good question to ask, because women, again, biologically, psychologically, we cannot fuck like men and be okay. It's just that we're not built that way. But women are told this is what they have to do. They have to fuck like men. They have to work like men. They have to think like men to be happy and to be equal. And that has been really damaging to the women who are raising the next generation. That's a scary thought, to think of how much we've damaged women, under the guise of freedom and revolution. They are becoming entirely distraught, incredibly mentally unwell. They're on all of these pills. You take the birth control, then you're depressed or anxious from the birth control. So then they put you on another, an antidepressant or some Xanax, and you're on this pharmaceutical cocktail for decades. It's really frightening to think of the state of women nowadays. And I wish we viewed it with more compassion and honesty and said, have we really screwed up here with what we did? Did we go too far? What is
Or
the answer here?
or even just say, "Hey, this was great, but there were some costs attached." Even just saying that, like, "This was a good
Recognize,
thing on net,
yes.
but there were some things that were bad as a consequence." That's too complicated for people.
Informed consent
Yeah.
on everything. It's just, no, you're going to be happy if you do all the same things as men. This is the prescription for women. This is the prescription for inequality, is becoming men.
Folks, gold has soared past $2,000 an ounce. The wars in Israel and Ukraine, as well as rate cuts that are on the table, are fueling gold's meteoric rise. Deutsche Bank, UBS, Bank of America, JP Morgan, they're all forecasting sizable rate cuts in an election year. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan, Larry Fink of BlackRock, they point out similarities to the 70s. In 1979, we had the Iran hostage crisis, war in the Middle East, and major cities in disarray and stagflation. Gold went from $158 an ounce in 74 to $850 an ounce in 1980. Meanwhile, our national debt is skyrocketing ever higher. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and the price of gold. In 2020, the U.S. debt was $23 trillion and gold was $1,500 an ounce. In 2023, the national debt is $33 trillion and gold is over $2,000 an ounce. Donald Trump warned that the U.S. dollar is no longer being the world standard, and that will be our greatest defeat in 200 years. So here's what you can do. Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention my name. That's Michael Malice. And you'll always get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you have to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide today, or even easier, just go to malicegold.com. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 7 years in a row. So just call 888-505-9845 or go to malicegold.com. Protect your money against the Fed and inflation.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Fetisi.
I love hearing people's stories of resilience and grit. This is why I created this podcast.
We are very excited to welcome Jim Gaffigan, Yasmin Mohammed, Glenn Beck, Tim Dillon, Abigail Schreier, Jeff Garland, Ayan Hirsi Ali, Sam Harris, Heather Hying, Jonah Goldberg, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Greenwald, Sarah Shahi, Colin Quinn.
If there's a culture of victimhood, then let's tell stories of grit and survival.
Subscribe and listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back to the show. The last thing I want to talk to you about, and this... the internet, I had on Count Dankula, I'm sure you know who he is, last week on the show, and we were discussing...
Didn't he have like a nude slip?
He did?
I don't know. Okay, maybe we can cut this. But I swear something happened with him, because I saw all these comments of people saying, like, I saw your penis. I don't know what happened with him, but I had to mention that. You can cut it.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, he tweeted. This happened 4 years ago. Oh, yeah, 4 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wait, get back on the mic. It's not picking up. Okay.
Okay.
So 4 years ago, I did not need to know this. Oh, God. Okay.
Never mind.
Anyway,
Back.
I'm not clicking on those links. We were discussing whether people are getting stupider on the internet, and the consensus was it's not just that we're becoming old ladies, it's that it's really the case. So speaking of the internet getting dumber, I was on Timcast not that long ago, and there was a conservative dad's Real Women of America calendar, right? And the scary thing about this, like, conservative hot women, like, they had to use, they couldn't find 12. Like, 2 of you had to appear twice. And it was very much the kind of calendar you'd find at like a auto repair shop, like on the wall, like St. Pauli's Girl. It throws back to the 1940s, these like cheesecake pinup calendars that they sent with the boys overseas. And I looked at it. It was fine. It was silly. Josie, the redhead libertarian, she's not a conservative. here's the thing: the term conservative means two uh, overlapping things that are not necessarily the same. It means social conservatism, which is prissy, prudish. Any expressions of sexuality or hedonism are to be frowned upon and deleterious to society. But conservative also means patriotism, which means like chicks with machine guns and beers and barbecue, and like riding in like big trucks and things like that. So this is very much in line with the second definition of conservative. And for those of you who haven't seen it, like literally the only thing that you would call even remotely naughty, Riley Gaines, who is an Olympic swimmer, she's in her bikini in two pictures, one on the beach on a towel, sorry, one on a pool on a towel by the pool, another one she's coming out of the pool. You're in a bubble bath in a bra top or bikini, so you can't even see anything different than if you were just in the summer. Kim Klasick is there in a mini skirt. Catalina Loff is there in a t-shirt and shorts. Sarah Gonzalez, who's also a mom, is there in a dress. Dana Lash is in jeans and a t-shirt. Josie is doing this very cute, getting food out of the oven in high heels and a dress or a skirt. It's mid-thigh. Bethany Bartlett, I don't know who she is. She's at the gym in a crop top and I guess shorts. And this is being described as softcore porn. And what's amazing to me is anyone who is buying this calendar has access to porn that is so disgusting that if you and I sat down and got inebriated and tried to think of disgusting porn, we would never think of it because our brains don't work in that way. And yet this is regarded as an attack on conservatism, and to call it softcore porn. You're a mom. Josie's a mom, I believe. I don't know about Dana. Half of these women are. Sarah Gonzalez is, and a proud mom. Can you talk about this and this huge, to my opinion, completely disingenuous overreaction? And I got to tell you, what's really funny is a lot of these people who are like super social conservative are really into like looking at the male form in like Greek statues. But you're not even like naked, or even you're not even like scantily clad, most of these women.
No, and I hate to invoke Andrew Tate here, but even Andrew Tate came out and said, "Are Republicans done? Are the right wing soy boys done talking about women who won't sleep with them?"
Yeah.
In regard to this, I mean, when even Andrew Tate is coming out and being like, "Really, guys?" But so I agreed to do this. I didn't even promote it on my own page. Let the record reflect. I never posted this calendar. I did it as a favor to Seth Weathers, who produced the calendar, and he was like, "I have this great idea. I think you would be good for it. We want to recreate the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light shoe." And I was like, "Absolutely. I will take my costume back 100%, recreate it." That's why we did it in the tub, because there was this video, this Bud Light video of Dylan in the tub during the bubbles being all silly, whatever. And then there was the Audrey Hepburn one. So I did
you
this.
know what? Hold on. You didn't even change clothes. I just noticed that. Like, that's how lazy it was. 1 year with the Bud Light and with the beer, and then you're in the bathtub. You didn't even
Yeah.
change clothes.
Yeah, I'm still in the Audrey Hepburn look. The top is
Yeah.
a little different, but it was recreating Dylan Mulvaney. It wasn't like, I want to be hot and sexy in the bath. It was very much, there was a purpose to take back a costume that has been appropriated. And Dylan Mulvaney is now going to the Golden Globes and doing all these things. And I believe those opportunities should be afforded to real women. So that was my goal with it. And I wasn't even aware of anything else going on in this calendar. And I did it because I like Seth. So I do this calendar. I don't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting called demonic, and I'm getting all these notifications. I keep my notifications relatively off, so I only get notifications for people that I follow. And all of a sudden, I'm getting all of these notifications about things I'm tagged in. I'm being called demonic. I'm being told by Jenna Ellis she's making posts that I did softcore porn. There's people emailing my employer.
Can I interrupt you, though? I just want to be clear for people who haven't seen this. There's no males in these photos. None of these women are touching themselves in anything remotely suggestive ways. They're not even blowing kisses to the camera. So, like, talk about like soft core. Like, soft core is correct.
Yeah, and so it very much, like you said, was more of like a pinup vibe, and I'm not even that conservative. I posted a video after all this went down, and I was like, I want no part of whatever weirdness this is. I very much care about our border. I care about a lot of issues that would be considered conservative, but I don't want anything to do with this weirdness. Whatever it is, Michael, it was bad for 100 hours straight. No joke. That was all that these people were talking about for over 100 hours. And there's still people that whispers about it, but over 100 hours, our discourse was totally consumed by a few girls looking hot on a calendar.
But but
Um,
but but these are the same people who'd also love a president whose wife posed nude.
yes, yes. Not only that, it was there are so many better things to talk about, and these are people who don't leave their house. They're not registering voters. They're not doing anything of value. They don't even care that Seth is donating. The proceeds for these calendars, or percentage of the proceeds, is going to the Riley Gaines Foundation, which stops men from competing against women in sports. They don't care about any of that. They're not doing anything. Seth also donates to Ryan Gerdusky's 1776 project to actually make a difference in our country and in politics. That calendar and the money from it is doing a hell of a lot more than any of the people speaking about this. They're
I only know half these women, but none of them are anti-family, pro-promiscuity, pro-drug use, any kind of hedonism. Like, again, half of them are moms, and they take that very seriously. And okay, anyway, sorry.
But even
It's just
if they are, who even if you have an issue with it, even if you do think this calendar is demonic, whatever, which I think is absurd, to talk about it for so long
oh,
and
yeah.
say the most vile things, I think you're mentally ill. And some of the arguments too that people were saying, oh, well, you have to dress modestly because it's going to tempt people. It's basically softcore porn. I'm sorry, but if you look at that calendar and you need to go jack off or you need to go watch porn because of it, I think you should probably be locked up anyways. Most people are not having that reaction to that. I think you have your own perversion and porn brain if that's what you're seeing in all of these things. If that's what your mind immediately goes to, I think you have some deficiencies in your brain if that's immediately where your head is going by seeing some of these. Yes, some of the women looked hot. Who cares?
But
Who
also the
cares?
idea that a conservative beer company wouldn't have hot chicks, like beer and hot chicks as advertising, have been, at the very least, the St. Pauli girl has been hand in hand for what was that? The Swedish bikini team from the 80s. There was a whole ad campaign with that. So this has been a thing. It's like very frat boy, very fun. No one takes it seriously. I guess no one should take it seriously. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself for the third time. It's shocking to me that people are taking it this seriously when there are so many more flagrant examples, including within conservatism, of people engaging in profoundly disturbing, degenerate sexual behavior as opposed to being in a bikini as an Olympic swimmer.
Well, I'll give you one example. Exactly. They do disregard a lot of the transgressions of many members of Congress and Senate. And now you have Madison Cawthorn being touted around as if he's the one exposing all of the sexual degeneracy in Congress and in DC. And he's one of the biggest perverts I've ever met. And these people just don't care. The amount of women he's made uncomfortable in this space that he has come on to without their consent, or even when he invited me to his wedding, he sends me a text, Michael, saying, I can't wait to see you in a dress again, as he's inviting me to his wedding. These people are terribly perverse, and they just, again, people really like burning a witch at the stake. And they would rather do that than actually look at what's happening and look at the people who are leaders in discourse and say, hey, maybe they have their own transgressions. Maybe this issue is systemic and, these women are not the problem. Maybe it's us, but that would take too much introspection that I don't think they're capable of, frankly. A lot of these people who, again, are at the height of this discourse making comments about it, they're some of the biggest perverts I know.
Yeah,
I
the
would
other
like to
thing
see
is
their browsing history.
And this is something where I think the feminists do have a point. It is one of the good things, although there was a cost of the sexual revolution, is the acknowledgement that women have a sexuality and that discussing it shouldn't be forbidden. And this is something every female has to come to terms with, what it means for her, how she's going to address it. Is this going to be a cost benefit? How do you, manage that juggling act? To have those conversations, I think, is a healthy thing. Not necessarily to be promoting promiscuity, but just to be acknowledging this is something that women have, and it's okay to talk about it, especially for women with each other, and not have to feel like you're a disgusting person because sometimes as a female you have sexual desires or urges, just like men do. Not in the same way, but they certainly have them.
Yeah, I mean, there absolutely is that shaming, and instead of, I think there's this anger at the effects of the sexual revolution that has been disproportionately placed on women.
Yes.
So women are getting this anger, and we're seeing a lot of anger on these fringe right wing groups, particularly a lot of the Christian nationalist groups, that are really, really angry at women and the 304s, the hoes, and these are the types who consume the whatever podcast
Wait,
and
what's a
all of this.
304? Do I want to
It's
know?
code for hoes.
Why is it code for hoe?
Because if it's upside down, the
Oh
4 is an
God.
H.
Oh
Yeah,
God. I'm
304.
such a boomer. Okay.
And there's this rise in the whatever podcast and the fresh and fit and this, because it's become, I think that's a worse type of porn, to enjoy and get satisfaction from watching women be absolutely humiliated. Many of these women who are not the brightest bulbs in the bunch be absolutely humiliated and exposed on these podcasts. That to me is a lot worse than a calendar.
Folks, I encourage you to head over to malice.locals.com, where Ashley will be taking questions from viewers exclusively, from supporters exclusively, excuse me. Ash, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
I like the part where I got you to stop dead naming X.
You are welcome.
Hold on to your jingle bells. Pluto TV has all your holiday favorites for free. Enjoy Christmas classics like Scrooge with Bill Murray or Last Holiday with Queen Latifah. Plus, dive into festive channels like Holiday Movie Favorites by Lifetime or Hallmark Movies and more. Download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming holiday favorites on live channels and on demand. With thousands of free movies and TV shows, Pluto TV is your home for the holidays. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.